There's no easy way around it. Last week's election results were a solid gut punch for those of us who care about life, family, and freedom. We're still processing the fact that a majority of Virginians have no qualms voting for candidates who celebrate unlimited abortion and even fantasize about political murder. It's heartbreaking. It raises serious questions. What do the numbers tell us about how we got here? And where did things go wrong? And most importantly, as Christians, how do we rise to this moment with courage and biblical clarity? We're going to break all that down for you today. From the Family Foundation, I'm your host, Candy Cushman, with our president, Victoria Cobb. Well, welcome, everyone. Glad to have you with us for Speak Up Virginia. And I'll just mention at the outset, we do have some really important messages today, especially just coming out of this whole election mess. And so if you want to share this, I do encourage you to head over to the Family Foundation YouTube channel, look for the Speak Up Virginia playlist, and you can share this podcast episode and other important ones. And also, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, share that with people too and give us that 5-star review, which helps other people get access to it. So with that said, Victoria, we do have a lot. We're all processing this really just devastating results that, we watched happen last week, still dealing with the fallout of all that. But before we dive into all that and I get your takes on all that, I did want to share some feedback that we got from last week's episode. Last week, we talked about the redistricting power grab, but we also shared an encouraging message from Officer Tatum. And we got some interesting feedback, so I'm just going to share a little bit here. The first one says, powerful words from Officer Tatum. Thank you, Family Foundation, for the work you are doing in Virginia. So we're glad to get that encouragement right now, especially. Because of this episode, this person says, I will be more courageous in speaking up for God-given truths, gifts, and values. So that's good.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Encouraging to read that right at this time, especially, that someone could hear that and feel encouraged. But then we got another interesting one. And I wanted to hear your take on it because I thought they had a fair point. It says, guys, with all due respect, they have been taking lives for centuries over politics and religion. Nothing has changed. What's your response to that?
Well, sure, if you look globally, but I do think in American history, we are at a point that is different. And I think to acknowledge that or fail to acknowledge that would be really sort of odd. But yes, of course, globally, and yes, we've had political assassinations here or there, but the general tone and feel of our politics is not what it was. So I do think I stick by, I think it has changed in our context.
Yeah, there is a real concern over Benjamin Franklin's famous words, we have a republic if you can keep it, whether we're at a point where we can keep it.
Yeah,
so we take that for granted. We shouldn't get, jaded to assassination culture that other countries have.
Yeah,
so,
that hasn't been.
Lord help us.
We're known for peaceful transfers and those kind of things of democracy. Anyway.
One more comment I'll share here. They were just sharing their emotion that the nation is in rapid decline, but God has the last say in the end. So good perspective as we head into our topics.
Yeah, we're going to need that today as we talk through the election results. So I think that's good.
All right, well, let's just dive right in. I know we don't want to sugarcoat this. Call it what it is. It was devastating watching those results coming in.
Yeah, I mean, the political term is a gigantic blue wave. It felt a little more like a tsunami. A blue tsunami took over Virginia. And I think we did expect it to be not a favorable outcome. I mean, all the indicators, if you looked at polling, all those things, but I think it was larger than the wave. The blue was further spread than we expected.
Yeah. Well, I thought I would just start by backing up and kind of looking at the bigger picture before maybe we get into some of the more detailed mechanics of campaign mistakes and all that. But you just look at the bigger picture of the electorate and what's going on here. So I'm just looking at the fact that we had just over 3 million Virginians that voted. Let's just start there because we have like a 9 million population.
Yeah, I mean, you got to exclude the under 18s and all that stuff out of your 9 million, but there's still plenty of people that could be voting that are still choosing not to vote. And I'll just make a comment that we at the Family Foundation Action, the more political side of what we do, we knock doors and we actually can see voting history. We can't see who you vote for. Don't panic. We're not looking at who you voted for, but we can actually see in the last 10 elections, there's literally circles of the last 10 elections right at the top. And we can see whether you voted. And I mean, we've now talked to some of these people that don't vote and it boggles my mind that that people are kind of like, they just don't trust institutions. They don't think they can make a change. So yeah, there's a lot of people still not showing up. That's why we're knocking the doors, really.
Well, if you just narrow out to voters, let's say you have 6 million voters and only 3 million come out.
Yeah.
I know millions of those are Christians that are still sitting this out. And like you say, that you even talk to at doors. I mean, I do feel like some of this falls on the church, the Christian body, that with all these things at stake, commercialized marijuana, pot shop on every corner, unlimited abortion, that they're still asleep.
Well, you've heard that old expression, we're so heavenly minded, we're no earthly good. I don't know if you've heard that, but I mean, the idea of like, is there sort of a theology or an eschatology that kind of, well, we're here for another kingdom ultimately, and maybe we just don't invest enough, which is not biblical. Actually, we are, I mean, we are ambassadors. We are, we have heavenly citizenship, but we are here on earth now to show his glory, to make his glory known. And that isn't just spiritual. That is that his principles work and they help human flourishing. So it's unfortunate that the church does have a lot of people, I think, that are probably sitting this out.
I mean, that's one of the parts that upsets me the most because it's a love your neighbor thing. And when we don't even show up to vote to honor what our founding fathers fought for, what our military folks risked their lives for.
It's also stewarding the blessing that God's given us. We get to wake up in America every day. Guess what? Lots of people don't. And they don't have a choice in what their government is. And we do. We the people are the government. That is a stewardship thing. It is a blessing that's been given to us, just like every other blessing in our lives. And when we steward that poorly, I think we're accountable to God. It's like a talent that you buried or whatever.
So. I mean, we got to get out of that mindset that we're just minding our business at home, we do need to love our neighbor in a broader way. And I don't know if people really understand what happened here. So let's just talk about the sobering part of this, because as a result of this election, and it was a House, it was the top executive branch and the House seats. So you now have 64 out of 100 House seats that they now are in control of, right?
That is a hair from a supermajority. Just so everybody understands, like it's almost a veto-proof margin. Not that we're going to get a veto because they're all on the same team from the governor down to the House, but that's an alarming thing.
Now, there are the facts. I mean, I think there's the reality that we're not going to have as business-friendly, police-friendly, tough-on-crime environment anymore for the next few years at least. But there's the social issues that we care about as a biblically minded organization. I just want to go through those because I just feel like people don't understand that as a result of this outcome, they're going to perceive that they have a mandate. And I'm just going to list some of these, Victoria, and then I want to hear your thoughts. We know you've been sharing with me how one of the first things you thought about is homeschooling freedoms being attacked. Pot shop on every corner. The only thing holding back from that was Governor Youngkin's veto. That is not going to be there. They've been trying every year to just full-fledged commercialize marijuana, pot shop on every corner. More gambling, rollback, parental rights protections, all of those efforts Youngkin made. We know they're going to roll those back. The boys in the girls' locker rooms.
Yeah.
Abortion, marriage amendment. I mean, it's big.
It could really get you down if you actually think of the gravity of how big all of this is. And shame on us because we're part of not having enough of us block this stuff. I mean, really, truly, if Christians came out and voted, we could stop this stuff. We are now going to watch. You think about it sometimes when, when you're in a really hard situation personally, you rely on God more, you pray more, you feel more dependent. But you always think, I should live like that anyway. But it takes the tragedy. I hate to say it. I kind of feel like we're in this moment collectively as a Commonwealth where it's like, we should be vigilant. We should always be voting. We should always be engaged. But now we're going to kind of see it. And all of a sudden we're going to go, oh my golly, we really need to engage. And it is going to be hard to make change at this point.
That's what I'm afraid of, is what it's going to take till people have to actually feel the hurt with how this affects their kids, their schools, their businesses. I'm afraid too many people won't wake up until that point, and it really hurts my heart that we might have to get there. Now, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit and mention one bright spot because this kind of goes to that point. The one bright spot we saw in all of this was in Loudoun County School Board election. I think it was the only bright spot I know of in the elections in Virginia.
It's the only one I can think of. There may have been other ones we don't know about yet, but yes, we gained a conservative school board member in Loudoun County. And it's really important to note Loudoun County, like the rest of the state, went further blue. But this gal was able to win her seat. And I do think it's because these issues are so personal for them. These bathroom, issues with the boys and girls locker rooms, our Loudoun case, like it's so in their face. I do think that made a big difference. So
that's Amy Riccardi.
Yeah.
And
congratulations.
It's pretty amazing because she had run against this leftist before, and I think the previous time it was a 3-way race and she lost. And so she's come back for the Rocky victory round.
And I can't help thinking what the role of the church was in that. We have one of our most active churches up there, Commonwealth Chapel, that are just totally Cornerstone Chapel, that are just totally engaged. The pastor's willing to talk about it. They've talked about these issues. I have to think that there's also this sort of connection between, we have a very, very, very large engaged church, everybody talking about a really relevant issue, and then we are able to get a conservative into the school board.
Yes, because she defeated someone that was 100% for these policies, allowing boys into the locker rooms and the opposite sex into the other locker room.
And so now the board is divided with just one more vote to the liberal than the conservatives. And so you have a shot. I mean, you just have to kind of get one person to come off the crazy, and you might be able to get something done there. So that's big.
But to your point, hitting at home, I mean, and also because of the church involvement, people were showing up at these rallies in that community about this issue. Our legal team had helped with raising awareness with this legal case. Well, of course, we've talked about it before, the 15-year-old boys that are now facing a sexual harassment charge or something on their record with the school.
And it's the same county that had the sexual assault in the bathroom. It's the same county where, go back to the beginning of these battles, Tanner Cross was put on administrative leave because a teacher wouldn't tell kids that a boy can be a girl. This is that same county. I mean, this has just been a flashpoint for all of these issues.
But those parents have gone through a lot of hurt out there. We've heard the parents of these boys talking about, one of them even moved out of state as a result of this. And just in case people aren't totally up to speed, these are the 15-year-old boys that had a girl come in their locker room that was
videotape them.
And they're the ones accused of sexual harassment. Our legal team's defending them, but it all comes out of the crazy policies.
Right.
And that these parents have gone through a lot of agony, months of this. And it goes back to our point of, I don't want to see more parents have to face this, but it does seem like this points to that.
Obviously, if you do face it, you may be more motivated to engage and to vote. And so it sounds like the good folks of Loudoun County actually stepped up to the plate and said, we're going to at least fix the school board seat. All
right. Well, back to the topic of all the kind of dirty laundry lists that we are going to expect to see come out and be hanging out in the air now. It's interesting, Abigail Spanberger's victory speech, it still sounded pretty bland, except for she really went all out on this abortion.
Which is so interesting because they now have a supermajority. We have abortion running rampant in Virginia, and they still feel the need to make this central issue as if there's any kind of threat to it. We'd love for there to be a threat to it. We're going to work our darndest to keep working to, encourage people to save human life, and we're going to work on safe zones for life. But I think it's amazing that they feel this need to still elevate this issue in our environment where we have 38,000 abortions every year. It's awful.
Yeah. Well, let's just listen to a clip of that real quick.
So as we begin this transition to a new administration, I want to be absolutely clear about a couple things. First, Virginia is the only state in the South that hasn't restricted women's reproductive rights since the Dobbs decision, and under my watch, it will stay that way.
Well, there you have it. The mask is off with that issue.
I don't think we were in doubt that they were pro-abortion, all these folks that won, but they're clarifying.
Well, another thing she had said as well is this phrase, earlier before that statement, she had said that now we're going to take politics out of the schools.
Yeah, this phrase kills me because they put all the politics in it. It used to be reading, writing, math. Now it's, LGBT this and all that. So it kills me when I hear these folks say that. It sounds great. I hope that means we're going to stop talking about LGBT stuff instead of math. What it means. But I don't think that's what I mean. I think what they mean is we're going to take parents out of schools. That's what they're actually saying.
It drives me crazy because under the whole Northam administrations, when they put the politics introduced this whole transgenderism indoctrination policy, Youngkin comes in, tries to fix all that. So yeah, he put the parental rights back in. So that really means they're taking the parental rights out is how I read that.
I want to go thank her and say, okay, so we're not going to have the ABCs. If you remember on the Fairfax wall where abortion and all this stuff was like literally hanging on the wall. I'm so excited to see all that go. Thank you, Abigail. I expect that to happen tomorrow.
Excellent point. All right. Well, let's look at another bigger picture of this. And that's the turnout with Republicans and Democrats. Because I know there's a lot of questions around that.
Yeah.
And I'm just let's put up this graphic here from the Washington Post, which is really sobering and stunning, really. It looks like there is not a single county that had any increase in Republican turnout. In every single county, it looks like there was a shift and increase to Democrat turnout, which is quite, just quite a stunner after the Youngkin turnout.
Well, you got to look at the numbers. I mean, the reality is even comparing Youngkin's election to this election, so compare the Republican candidate from 4 years ago to now, he got like 1.6 million votes out, basically, give or take. She got 1.44. I mean, that is a big drop off. Like literally people that voted for governor on the Republican side last time either did not come out or switch their vote to Democrat. You don't know which one. But, those kind of margins are, the Democrats did the opposite. They went from I think it was 1.5 or something in that ballpark against, when it was against Youngkin. But 4 years later, they had 1.9 million voters come out for Abigail Spanberger. So they went the other way. We went down. So yeah, you're going to lose when that happens.
So Victoria, I'll just ask you an open-ended question. I know there's lots of speculation. What in the world happened?
I mean, there's 100 answers to that. We have to talk about the obvious, which is that there were real campaign issues at the top. I mean, we can't ignore that. Everybody's talking about it. The campaign was not as strong as it needed to be. The fundraising in particular was dreadful. And so the money isn't there. If the money isn't there, you can have the best message in the world, but if you can't get it to the people, if they're on TV 10 times to your one commercial, it doesn't matter. And so that was obviously a fundamental issue. Also, I mean, if you look at what voters said was the number one issue, it's economy. Nobody's surprised by that. It's going to the grocery store and you can't afford, your ground beef is 3 times what it was a couple years ago. When that happens, you had a commercial that went early on where Abigail Spanberger claimed she was going to be the affordability candidate. Yep. And it was not answered. It was not answered well in the campaign. That should have been it needed to be, Republicans had to have an answer for that. And they just, at least at the top of the ticket, that wasn't the issue they were speaking to.
Yeah, especially with a bunch of people in Northern Virginia losing jobs with the government shutdown. That didn't help.
All of that is very real. We would have had a challenge with that, even if it was addressed. But when you leave it kind of silent, you don't really address it. And, that it's kitchen table issues always are going to matter, right? So yes, the trans issues are important to parents. Those have to be important to us, but we can't ignore affordability.
But here's the thing that's confusing is because in the Youngkin era, in that election, we saw this direct connection between people upset over parental rights, and everywhere there was a parental rights rally.
Yep.
It shifted upward with conservatives turning out, and we didn't see that this time. And so what is the difference there? That's kind of confusing.
The economy was decent. It wasn't, people were able to afford their groceries. I mean, housing's always been an issue, but it's getting worse and worse. So, we also need to look at the electorate. The bottom line is, if you have people who are not getting jobs, not buying houses, and not having kids, the more of that you create in your electorate, the more they want government dependency. They want government to solve all the answers. And that is typically going to have them voting for a gigantic government through Democrat legislators. And our electorate we've got to get back to the nuclear families and really helping people want to get married, have kids, and be able to afford a house so they have investment and ownership. When I knock those doors and the people that don't vote, a lot of them are adult children who are still living at home, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They're I don't even mean you're 24 just out of college and you just haven't found
We're talking 30s.
No, I'm finding 30s and 40s, but you look at the household, you can literally see what else is in the household.
Yeah.
And there's the older parent it's actually their house. And so when that's happening, those individuals either don't see the American dream as possible, they don't feel like they can capture, or they don't have investment in their community. That's a voting problem. And it plays out in these elections.
Yeah. Well, and I do want to say, We love Winsome Sears and her
Oh, yeah. I mean,
just heart for biblical principles. She has never backed away from that, is a friend of parental rights, life, all the issues we care about. I just want to acknowledge what a wonderful person she is. And, a lot of people, there's real campaign mechanic struggles that a lot of candidates run into.
Yeah.
And when you struggle with them in the beginning, it's just hard to recover.
Correct.
And then all
If
those
you
other
don't-
issues.
The early money matters. And if you don't get early fundraising, it's real hard to get late fundraising. And then even if you do, it's almost too late sometimes. So there was an influx of funding that came into the governor race, but it came in so late that it almost was irrelevant. Like you almost can't, like the TV's bought by then, the commercials are made, the messages are set, I mean, if you have months where the other candidate is on television, you're really kind of missing.
It's hard to make up that ground.
And it's unfortunate that that's true because again, it should come down to who are these candidates? What do they believe? Look at a voting record. I mean, Abigail Spanberger had a record in Congress. So we knew exactly where she was going to stand on girls' sports, for example. We knew exactly where she was going to stand on LGBT issues. Like those things were clear. So it should not require us to watch a bunch of commercials, right?
I know.
But we're a very short memory. We're an electorate that has a short memory and we are very emotionally influenced, by sort of what we see and what we hear. And we get, as collectively, we get trapped in the lies. And especially when there's a lot of money behind the lies.
And more rides on the commercials if conservative base isn't turning out.
Right. If we're not talking about it in our churches, then you're not fleshing it through a filter of God's word with other people, talking through like, what does this actually mean?
Let's talk about, even just beyond Christians, conservative base turning out. Let's talk about the role of Trump because we're hearing different things.
Oh, yeah, no question.
Here's what I'm
probably
hearing.
the largest thing to talk about in this whole election.
I mean, I'm hearing that Democrats were able to fuel anti-Trump rage. Let the rage fuel you, to quote someone we all know.
Mm-hmm.
They're able to fuel that. Anti-Trump on their side to drive people out. That's what I'm hearing. But on the conservative side, Republican, Trump wasn't on the ballot. So they didn't come out like they did for him previously. And that does concern me because Trump is not going to be on the ballot in the future unless he does something crazy and run for lower office. So
yeah, I mean, the Democrats will lose their enemy, but also if that's really what people are motivated to vote for on the conservative side, we have a problem because it should be about principles. It should be about issues. Yes, you want to pick a great leader that will lead on those issues, but if it's a personality following and it can't translate to other people who don't have sort of that. I don't even know what it is about Trump. I mean, it's just, he has there is no other person. And actually, there have been candidates who have tried to mimic some Trump-esque things, and that doesn't work. So there's not going to be anybody like that in the future. Even if you think in the next presidential race, you might have somebody like J.D. Vance, who's like the vice president now. It still isn't going to be the same personality doing those interviews and motivating people. And so we gotta get this under control. We got to vote because of issues and because of voting records, not because the fanfare,
well,
I guess.
The whole thing worries me because that's why you can't build an entire party around a unique personality or personality cult. It's not a long-term strategy. And if both parties eventually become all about either a personality or who's in control power, and that's it, that's the highest exalted ideal, then you are going to devolve into an assassination culture. It's all about power. There's no principles. It's just who's in control. I don't see how we don't devolve into civil war, into just another tyranny culture where you just massacre your opponent. I mean, I'm not talking tomorrow this happens, but eventually if you have zero party that has a higher principle to rally around, I don't see where we go from there. So it does concern me that at least on the conservative side, we need a better long-term framework here.
Yeah, I mean, this election in Virginia was no question there was a Trump factor there because you look at everything happening across the entire nation, there was a Trump factor. I mean, every single thing went blue, basically. New Jersey or judgeships, or I mean, there's a number of things that were on the table in lots of places, and there was, in fact, a Trump backlash. We can hate that, but that is what happened. And in Virginia, I think it was heightened because all of those federal employees, they were home, not working. No question, everybody had plenty of time to go out and vote, and they're voting against what's happening in government. Well, Trump is the symbolic head of the government, right? That the Republicans are in charge of the House. So now it's crazy because the Democrats are the ones unwilling to pass a clean CR and get them back to work and get them paid. So it's really bizarre that you can blame Republicans in that scenario. But the reality is that's how it sort of sometimes plays out in people's minds. And certainly Democrats fueled that message. They kept kind of, oh, it's all the Republicans' fault. You're out of a job,
which they're going to do. And so then conservatives have to have something to turn out for.
We have to have answers. We have to explain why our principles work and lead to ultimate flourishing, because the easier answer is government will solve everything. Go vote for a bigger government. That is why there's this appeal. I mean, we saw what happened with the New York City mayor. The reason we're getting a Democrat socialist in the mayorship of New York City is because when things look bleak, if no one offers an alternative plan, and the easiest plan is let's just redistribute the wealth and we'll, somehow we'll end up on top of government just sort of, fixing all the problems. That's why socialism is on the rise, and it's an alarming situation, and it's pulling the entire Democratic Party to the left. And we're going to have problems with that in Virginia, because it's not going to be just New York that gets pulled to the left. If he becomes part of the symbolic head of that party and starts pushing and people start grabbing onto that message, it's going to affect every leader down here too. So we've got problems ahead.
When you say people gravitating to what's easy, I also think that's the personality thing. Like people gravitate toward the easy personality that resonates with them or that's flashy to them. And I love so much of what Trump has done, but the entire conservative realm cannot be hinged permanently to a personality, and because it's not always going to be there.
No, absolutely not. And I think we do need to talk about sort of, the role, like just sort of switching gears a little bit. I think we need to talk a little bit about the violence issue in this election.
Okay.
I just think I think we were a little shocked that, we've talked about the governor race, but let's talk about the AG's race. I think a lot of us thought when you have the Democrat candidate, Jay Jones, saying, that he'd like 2 bullets in the head of his political opponent. And then further, even worse, saying that he'd like his political opponent to, the children to die in the arms of his wife. That's a horrible statement. So I think a lot of us thought, at least in that race, people will vote against that. And it didn't happen enough.
Yeah, I think we're all still trying to get our mind around a majority of voters were okay with someone fantasizing about conservatives either dying or having their children die in their arms. I don't know exactly what you do with that. There
was some swath of voters that voted Democrat for the top 2 offices that did not vote for the AG, but it wasn't enough. So, when you look at the numbers, there is some group there that said, okay, I'm not going to vote for Jay Jones. But the fact that the numbers were still so high and that Jason Miyares ends up losing this race. Now, early voting also played a factor in that. It's really unfortunate. Those texts came out after, several 100,000 votes had happened. So that's also just, I don't think that was enough to make the difference. I'd have to look at the math, but it's alarming.
Well, I think the thing that's so disturbing about it is you feel like maybe back in the day, if someone said something like that they fantasized about the opposite party leader dying or their children dying, that they loved, they would rather kill them than over Hitler, talking about people getting shots to the head, that was enough for everyone to agree that's beyond the pale. That person is irresponsible. That person cannot be the top cop, essentially, in our state. It was disqualifying. And now all of a sudden it isn't. And how did we get here? And I'll just, even right after, you would think even on the other side, people would be like, people would be kind of disassociating themselves, putting some distance. But right after, now I know Louise Lucas is a rebel rouser, but still, it's not a good thing when they get traction from this. I'm going to put some images up that she put up I think it was even on November 4th, the day that this is all happening. And it's just this kind of, it looks violent.
Oh, yeah, she's very aggressive.
So, but just the idea, we look like a, I don't know if like a totalitarian kind of government where you just put out this total chaos, violent political images. It's
and one of the images, anarchy. Yeah, and one of the images we're going to put up is her basically going after Carrie Coyner for having revealed the text. She's more worried that the text came out. You know, when you say, Virginia is for lovers, not snitches, she's more irritated that those texts came out than she is about the fact that somebody views their opponent that way and wants violence upon their opponent.
She had back-to-back here on election day, Virginia's for lovers, not for snitches. And on the surface, that doesn't look so bad. But what you're really saying is that the person who had the problem is the person that deserves to be punished is the one that shed light on violence, exposed it, and you're not disciplining the one that actually had this violent speech. So that's concerning. Then right after that, she posted this kind of trolling thing of, I don't know if everybody saw the weird thing where Jay Jones sort of tried to kick a dog at a polling site. It was really a weird, quirky thing to do.
And it's funny how the internet just grabbed onto it.
It was weird for a politician to do that. I don't know what he was thinking. But she transposed, Jason Mears and him kicking him like a dog. And, that can just be trolling.
Oh, yeah.
But just the idea of that equating people to dogs, just the whole thing altogether seems dehumanizing. And I'm going to put one other picture here that
of her being happy when the bus got caught on fire.
Well, this also was the next day after the election. She went back and posted Winsome Sears' bus catching on fire. I don't know if we ever found out how that happened. So
I have not heard how it happened. But
I don't think
but we shouldn't be smiling about our opponents. I mean, it could have been very dangerous. We're really glad it wasn't, but that didn't end up in any
That's
any
what
loss
I mean. I
of
feel
life
like
or
I'm looking
anything.
at a third world tyrannical country here with these kind of posts.
That's the concerning part is we have been known for peaceful transfers of democracy.
Yeah.
We are known for, yes, we disagree, but we don't wish violence. We don't, and now we're sort of moving in that direction. And I think there has been a sort of a bar that keeps moving on what the electorate's willing to tolerate in aggressive, crass, just what they're willing to tolerate out of the mouths of politicians is just getting worse and worse. And I think it's on both sides. I do think that we have folks on our side that go too far and say things that they shouldn't. I haven't seen 2 bullets to somebody's head. I mean, that was kind of the maybe the worst example. But
you got fringe on our side with this Nazi comments. And I'm just going to put it out there. And to me, that's what happens when you have a Christless, a graceless, idolatry, a valueless system, and it becomes all about power. You are going to get that on both sides. Now, I think conservatives, you're looking at more fringe, and I'm worried on the left. It's just getting the entire base.
It feels like it's mainstream on the left. If you're looking at those polling numbers, I'm very concerned about the polls that keep showing that more and more Democrats seem to be okay with violence. And the numbers are just higher.
Well, and let's look at some more stats on that because that's a concerning thing. If the majority of voters come out and vote for Jay Jones, who said something that a while back would have been disqualifying, that is concerning that it's more of a base here. And so the other stunning thing with the statistics, Victoria, I know you talked to me about this, was the gender disparity. I want you to talk about this. I'm going to put up some images while we're talking about it. We're going to start with this Fox News exit polls showing 65% women coming out for Spanberger, but the majority of men coming out for Earl Sears.
Yeah, and it's really just women are. I think this women's rights message has just overtaken all these other things. It doesn't make any sense to me that we have this situation other than we've got more and more single women. Back to this issue of if you're not married and have kids, you don't. The investment in the next generation and caring about those parents' issues. I think we do have a problem that the less marriage we have, the worse these numbers get.
Well, look at the attorney general race that we were just talking about. I don't have a image for this, but we also saw that 55% of men voted for Jason Mears, and then 60% of women voters voted for Jay Jones. That right there.
And it wasn't even just the vote. We saw similar things in the exit polling about their okayness with his comments. There were also sort of exit polls around how do you feel about the fact that he says
and asked them, "Are you okay with this?" And they were okay with it.
It's pretty terrible, and it is surprising. It is really surprising to me because they used to say women were the emotional voters, right?
Why don't women care about women, their children, and another
I think because
mom?
there aren't enough women getting married and having kids. I think we've got a problem there, and because I think it's hard. Maybe I just can't wrap my head around a mom not being horrified that someone wished that a child died in the arms of another mom. Like I just can't put my head around that. And so maybe it's, I'm sort of like in denial that, I don't know. I think we've dehumanized our political opponents. Let's be honest. Like political opponents are no longer people somehow.
But women are leading the charge on these
dehumanization
dehumanization here in this exit polling.
I know. It's consistent with what we hear on the abortion issue, that men are more movable than women.
Well, maybe it gets back to these issues connect more than we think. When you start losing a regard for life in the womb, it reduces sanctity of life at all levels subconsciously. Things connect to each other.
For a long time, our movement has not just been talking about being pro-life, but we've been talking about a culture of honoring life. Like there's so much more than just caring about the unborn. If you have a culture that doesn't care about the unborn, doesn't care about the elderly, by the way, physician-assisted suicide coming our way.
Right.
So if you have that culture and then you sort of dehumanize your political opponents, like then you see where you put it all together. You see where we're going and where we're partway there.
You go to watching someone get shot in the neck in front of thousands of people
and people rejoicing.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're in a place where we have literally become numb to violence in a way that it should scare everyone.
There needs to be alarm bells going off. And Karen Hamilton, another
one
bright
of our
spot.
news stars. So, this is the seat that Delegate Nick Freitas vacated. And thankfully, I think he was part of finding a fantastic candidate to run in his place. So, yeah, keep going.
Yeah, so she called it right here. She posted, ladies, we need a revival. We're putting her post on the screen here. Ladies, we need a revival. She just puts it out there. The majority of women in Virginia view killing their babies as a fundamental right. They accepted assassination culture. If that describes you, you have lost your soul. So I don't think you can say it anymore.
I know she has not been one to mince words, and I actually can't wait to see her at the General Assembly. I mean, it'll be her freshman year. She might be quieter, but she sounds like she's willing to call things out as they are, and we need that. I mean, we're going to have fewer voices on our side down there, so the ones that we do have are going to need to be strong because it's going to be about saying the hard things and not letting liberalism just become the norm and look acceptable.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. Where do we go from here? I know everyone's hearing us all talk about this. They're sharing our commiseration.
Yeah.
But where do they go from here? And let's talk about that both on a practical and a spiritual level. Let's just start practical. What role do Christians, do concerned social conservatives take right now?
Well, we've got a lot of work to do on changing hearts and minds. Obviously, we're not where we need to be, but also on getting the people who believe like we do engaged. So all of that, and that's not work that happens in an election season. That happens every day in our conversations at church, with our friends, with our neighbors. That isn't something we wait until the last second. No, we talk about these cultural issues. I made this statement at a church. I hate to say it. We've got to normalize talking in church as a family. We're the body of Christ. We're the family. We've got to normalize talking about these hard issues and filtering through scripture in our congregations. And if we don't do that, then we end up where we are. So that's a big next step.
Yes, and let me just say, I had someone talk to me the other day that was actually trying to go out and talk to people about the abortion issue. And she's going to one-off meetings. And she told me, Candy, I'm going to these small meetings and it's like we have no way to speak to larger groups, and it would be a lot more efficient if I was speaking to more people at a time. And I'm thinking that's where the church comes
Every
in.
Sunday morning we gather all together. And these issues are straight out of scripture. I mean, straight out of scripture. So that's a big important piece. Another piece that's going to be the role of groups like the Family Foundation and everyone else sort of involved is we've got to expose the darkness over the next period of time. We're going to have some really hard things happen and we're going to have to call them out. We're going to have to be a little bit like the prophet, speaking into a hard culture, just saying it like it is, because that is part of, if it just kind of quietly, the needle just moves to the left and it just happens kind of quietly and very just sort of, oh, ho hum, then guess what? It just keeps on moving left. But if as it moves left with every single inch they try to take, if we are saying, what is the end result? Where are we going with this? Then we have a chance to wake up a generation of Christians.
Yeah, so we are going to have to move more into that prophetic role and speak truth when it's uncomfortable, maybe even has more of a cost. I think we need to gear ourselves up for that spiritually. And let me just on the practical level mention some opportunities that are going to come up. So in this next General Assembly, in the next session, we're going to have more of a prophetic role calling out. We can't stop shedding light on the way that we know they will trample parental rights and regard for life. And we can't just go home, feel discouraged and say, well, it didn't matter. We have a biblical responsibility to shed light on that, show light in the darkness. So first up, I hope I got this right. Pro-life Advocacy Day is on January 16th. I think that's the next day after session starts. So that's the first opportunity. Then sometime in early February, we will have another Parental Rights Day where we will call out how they are trampling on parental rights. Now, one thing we're concerned about that I will just mention quickly, Elizabeth Guzman.
Yes.
Was the one that...
She was in office before, and now she's back.
She introduced this bill before, so we know what's coming, that essentially would criminalize parents if they try to direct their child struggling with gender identity in a more healthy direction. They could be, criminalized for not so-called affirming gender identity. We're going to go back to that whole rule.
Yeah, imagine CPS being basically mobilized against you because you aren't affirming your child's gender confusion. That's a place we're going to have to defend against.
We will be speaking out against that. So Parental Rights Day sometime in early February. But another date we definitely have on the calendar right now is the Virginia March for Life, April 22nd. That is
important.
Yeah. That's going to be huge because we will likely be right in the middle of right then fighting an abortion amendment to enshrine unlimited abortion.
Coming to our own ballots. So that's going to be a huge event, and we're going to need everybody engaged in that.
Mark your calendar now, April 22nd. Please, everyone come out. We cannot afford for people to not come out and sit this one out, April 22nd. But let's end on a spiritual note, Victoria.
Okay.
I know God had been speaking to you. You shared with our staff a few things. Well, I'll just mention first the email that went out from you that you and Todd had put together. You quoted it from Onward Christian Soldiers, the hymn.
Classic old hymn.
It's good. I
wonder if the younger generation even knows it, but it's got some great lyrics.
There's a reason why this is a classic. I'm just going to read some of the lyrics here because it's so appropriate. Crowns and thrones may perish, kingdoms rise and wane, but the church of Jesus constant will remain. Gates of hell can never against the church prevail. We have Christ's own promise, and that cannot fail. So we do need to remember that today. But tell us what you were convicted about. You were reading in Jonah.
Yeah, I think there's a temptation in this moment to think if we could just run away. And I think that's
we
what
all want to just run away right now.
Montana looks great. It's beautiful. It's all conservative, whatever. I was sort of struggling with that initial moment of just like, oh, we're going to have to deal with all this. And it felt a little like Nineveh. And I was sort of just brought to the story. I was brought to the story of Jonah. And honestly, it was just sort of there's just nowhere in scripture that I see that God goes, oh yeah, it's getting hard. You go run away to someplace nice. That isn't. And, Jonah tried to find an alternate path and obviously didn't go well for him. But yeah, what I think is interesting is just this idea that he was called to speak truth to a very dark culture, to go to Nineveh and say what was true. And I guess I was encouraged because when you read the story, I think when you're a little kid, it's in storybooks.
It's all about the fish.
Right, it's all about the fish. And I just envision okay, then he finally gets there and he's preaching on the sides. I envision a little city and all the people are just, oh gosh, we did something terrible. And then they repent. And that's true. But it also has this moment where the king is made aware of how wrong they've been. And the king actually, it reaches the king and he basically tells the whole culture, the whole city, get in sackcloth, weep and mourn and let's get our act together. This is worse than the message summary, but you know what I'm trying to say. He's basically saying, we're going to get it together as a city. And it just struck me that that's public policy. That is getting to the powers that be and how much change you can affect when you engage it, both from talking to the culture, but also still be engaged with the General Assembly because they do set the policy for large groups of people. So I kind of had forgotten that.
Well, and it also struck me when you shared that, to go back, because I went back and read it, the humility there. There is a leader calling people to humble repentance.
We got to turn around.
Yeah, I don't think we don't have that right now. We don't have leaders on any side a lot. We do have some. There are some wonderful people, Christian leaders that are out there, but it's not predominant. we need to be at a place of humility with the Lord, what we have done wrong in our nation. Lord, forgive us and help us lead the way. I'm not hearing that as a predominant message from a ton of people.
Completely fair.
So maybe God still has a place for our nation to get here, but let's lead the way. Let's not run away. Jonah gave us that
run away. It doesn't bode well anyway.
I guess, I don't know if I want to read the whole thing, but I encourage everyone to read Jonah's prayer. From inside the fish.
You have lots of time to pray when you're...
Do you think I could read this whole thing if I go fast here? Victoria.
Go ahead.
I'm going to try it. Because it's just a good word for us.
We'll just
wrap up on this. Yeah. Jonah said, "In my distress, I called to the Lord, and he answered me. From deep in the realm of the dead, I called for help, and you listened to my cry. You hurled me into the depths, in the very heart of the seas. The current swirled around me." And we're all feeling those currents right now.
Yep.
He said, "All your waves and breakers swept over me, and I said, I've been banished from your sight. Yet I will look again toward your holy temple. The engulfing waters threatened me. The deep surrounded me." And then I'll skip a little bit here. "But you, Lord my God, brought my life up from the pit." So we do have hope here.
Yeah.
"When my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, O Lord, and my prayer rose to you in your holy temple. To those who cling to worthless idols, turn away God's love for them. But I, with shouts of grateful praise, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed, I will make good. I will say, salvation comes from the Lord."
I love it. That's the best place to end, right? At the end of the day, we look to God and, He's where we get our hope. He's where we get the anchor. He's what's going to turn around the culture, and he's what's going to turn around the public policy.
He wants to show his love to us. He doesn't want us going after worthless idols. But, all right. If you want to share this, make sure you get it out to lots of people, as we shared in the beginning, the Speak Up Virginia playlist on YouTube. And Victoria, I love that you invited people for comment feedback last time. We'd love to hear your feedback and your thoughts on what we're sharing today. Please do. You can comment on the YouTube or send us an email, or put the comment on Spotify or Apple. We'd love to hear from you. It helps us to know what you're thinking, how you're resonating with all of this. So remember, we are stronger together. We will not give up the fight. We will see you next time.